This is the Ramana Maharshi Self-Knowledge Satsang, a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching. I bring this to you in this satsang. The background image today is Arunachala. This was taken from a house Carol and I lived in during our years in Tiruvannamalai. Arunachala is an ancient mountain formed long before India broke free from the ancient mega-continent Pangaea. Arunachala is roughly 3 billion years old. So is the oldest religious shrine in the world, much older than the Himalayas, for example, which are only about a tenth of the age. Arunachala is thought by the Hindus to actually be Shiva, not some place of his abode, but Shiva himself. It is said in Hindu scripture, by seeing Chittambaram, by being born in Tiravur, by dying in Kashi, or by merely thinking of Arunachala, one will surely obtain liberation. We lived in Tiruvannamalai, not in the city itself, but west of town, where we had good views of the mountain and could see local farming families work their land, tilling with bullocks, pulling the plow, and planting and harvesting rice. We walked the inner path around Arunachala many times, maybe 500 or so. We found the solitude of the inner path gave us a great experience of Arunachala. I would often take a copy of Song of Rivu, and we would stop along the way and read aloud a few verses. From 2008 to 2010, I published the most extensive set of articles anywhere about Arunachala on my blog, posting more than 25 articles. I showed the inner path end to end, almost step by step. I wanted this to be immersive, so I posted many photos, more than 2,000 of them. When I asked my teacher, Nome, how to make best use of this time walking with Arunachala, he said that I should notice what does not move, even when I walk. Let me show you a few pictures that I took of Arunachala. A sunrise, a foggy day, a sunset lit by gold, a sunrise, another sunrise, another sunrise, another sunrise. The big temple, Now, on to this week's reading from Who Am I? This is paragraph 25. However sinful a person may be, if he would stop wailing inconsolably, alas, I am a sinner, how shall I obtain liberation? And casting away even the thought that he is a sinner, if he would zealously carry on meditation on the self, he would most assuredly get reformed. Whatever was the identity of the seeker, what is needed is to turn the focus within to the self. Karma does not matter. Karma is for the body. Are you a body? This spiritual path does not require purification, nor is it limited by the karma of the seeker. Again, Ramana says most clearly that all that is needed is self-inquiry, to know yourself. Now, what is required for liberation? The chief element is your desire for liberation. It's this desire that turns you towards practice. With a strong enough desire for liberation, you'll be able to overcome any obstacle to practice. How strong is your desire for liberation? What is required in practice is to stop thought. Do this with thorough, repeated, and continuous inquiry. When thought stops, you have the opportunity to see what is behind thought, which is consciousness. Consciousness is what you are when everything else has been eliminated by careful discrimination. And then, when thought stops, by your own experience. Now, on to our videos for the week. First is Swami Sarvapriyananda, and he talks about how to succeed in spiritual life.
When I have talked about non-dual Vedanta for the last few years I've been teaching here, one common question which I come up against is this. Swami, I listened to the talks, I read the books, and I understand it too. But what do I do now? What's next? This is one form of the question. The other form of the question is, I understand what you are saying, Swami, but my life is not changing. I'm still suffering. I'm still the same person. How do I realize this? If you ask that question, then Advaita Vedanta has not worked for you. You're not even supposed to ask that question. The pointers are supposed to be enough for us to awaken. Now, what will happen if you go to a non-dualist, an Advaitin teacher, the pure, strict non-dualist teacher, and say this? You know what the answer is? The answer is, the method is hearing, reflecting and meditating, Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. It's not working. Not working. Repeat. I've been repeating 30 years, 40 years. Better luck next life. I actually heard a great teacher, a contemporary non-dualist teacher. He said this. Because there is no other way in the strict monastic, Advaitic, non-dual Vedanta. The truth is here, it's being told to us. we listen to it, we argue it out if you have got doubts, and we try to settle down on it. Not working. Keep trying. Not working. Next life. There are many lives ahead of you. Now, in Kashmiri Shaivism, what they will do is, the way of Shiva, not working. Okay, step down. Take the help of the Divine Mother, Shakti. How does it work? What is the problem? Why does the way of Shiva not lead to enlightenment? Why does non-dual Vedanta, why does it not work instantaneously? It should work instantaneously. One of the attractions of the non-dual path is that it seems, I will say within quotes, it seems to be effortless, instantaneous. And who doesn't want an effortless and instantaneous way? But doesn't seem to work. So why does it not work? They analyze it. In Kashmiri Shaivism, they will not say better luck next time. Said, yes, we have something more for you. They'll open another drawer and take out something else. Here is something for you. Now, as we go from the way of Shiva to the way of the Divine Mother, it will seem to become much more complicated. Remember, the truth is not complicated. We are complicated. So our problems are complicated, and therefore the solutions also become more and more complicated. The way of Shiva, simple and direct. The way of Shakti, complex. The way of the Jiva, Anvaupai, most complex. So what is the way of Shakti basically? What is the problem? They analyze the problem in this way. What happens, if you try to settle down, I have understood Vedanta, I am Brahman. If you try to settle down there, what will happen? Thoughts keep coming to the mind. Simple. Swami Prabhavananda ji in his book, Sermon on the Mount According to Vedanta, when he's talking about blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. He says, try this. What do you mean by pure of heart? How do I know I'm not pure of heart? Try this. Make up your mind, I'm going to think about God. Only about God and nothing else, in whatever form you're used to. Settle down seriously, quietly, and try it. Within a minute, within 2 minutes, you will find other thoughts crowding. Almost all people have this experience. This is the sign of the impurity of the heart. So they call it ashud, they call it vikalpa in Kashmiri Shaivism. Vikalpa means thought construct. The mind starts chattering away. Very natural. It's the very life of the mind to think. So thoughts keep coming. Vikalpa. Now what is the way in Kashmiri Shaivism? They say, all right, these vikalpas are there and you cannot remove them. Now the way is generate what they call Shuddha Vikalpa, a pure thought construct. What is the nature of the pure thought construct? The same as the original teaching of Kashmiri Shaivism, non-dualism. I am the limitless Shiva. Abhinava Gupta, great Kashmiri Shaivite teacher, he says, Vishwottirna Vishwatmacha, transcending this physical universe and the essence immanent in this physical universe, that Shiva I am. This will be the structure of the pure thought construct. Now the question is, this pure thought construct, can it really capture Shiva, the ultimate reality? Can you think your way to realization? And the answer is no, you cannot. No thought can reveal the ultimate reality. Abhinava Gupta gives a classic example. He says, you might as well ask a pot kept out in the bright sunlight. Ask the pot, illumine the sun. Impossible. It's a crazy idea. It's just the opposite. It's the sun which illumines the pot. The pot has absolutely no way of illumining the sun, and neither is it necessary to. Similarly, to say the mind can capture my ultimate reality, Shiva, it won't work. Then what will this Shuddha Vikalpa do? What is the purpose of this practice? Two things. I will quickly race through this. I think we have got a little Q&A afterwards. So if you have got doubts, you can ask that. So it goes like this. Two functions, negative function, positive function. The negative function of this practice is the illusion of duality is to be removed. Abhinava Gupta says, Swarupa Akhyati Matra Dvaitam. He says, Dvaita Adivasam, Swarupa Akhyati Matram. But what it means is, this experience of a dualistic universe is only due to the non-apprehension of our non-dual self. It is there, but we don't see it as it is. That's why we experience this. So this Shuddha Vikalpa, this practice, will only remove this error. It will, look at the difference. It will not catch hold of Shiva. It will remove the ignorance that we are not Shiva. That's the negative function of the Shuddha Vikalpa. What is the actual practice? The practice has three aspects. Mantra Shakti, number one, the power of the mantra. The second one is called Bhavana, Sattarka, that's a technical term, Bhavana, which means meditation. And the third one is Shuddha Vidya, pure knowledge, what they call enlightenment. So, the practice has three aspects: mantra, meditation, enlightenment. How does the mantra work? It works like this. As Swami Vivekananda said, the Divine Mother is everything. What do you mean by everything? There are two aspects of everything. Forms, what you experience in the universe, and names, the conceptualization that we do in our minds about those objects. Whatever you experience is called Rupa. And the way you grasp it in your mind, the conceptualization here, the language used for that is called Nama. So the Divine Mother is both Rupa and Nama, the thing itself and the concept in your mind. The concept is always expressed in language. So the Divine Mother manifests herself in language. So the entirety of language is generated by letters. I'm going fast now. The entirety of language is generated by letters. And the set of letters, the Sanskrit alphabet, is called Matrika. Matrika. So this Matrika is none other than the Divine Mother, none other than Shakti, manifested as language. And language expresses or enables us to experience the universe of forms. The universe and our language are coextensive. I remember one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, Wittgenstein, in his classic Nomic text, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, he begins, almost at the very beginning, he says, the limits of my language are the limits of the universe. Universe and language, name and form, they go together. Now, we do not recognize the Divine Mother in all these forms. And we think language is ordinary. This ordinary language ties us to this ordinary world. We do not see the divinity in either of them. What the Mantra Shakti does is, it says that language is divine. And to see the divinity in language, to use the divinity inherent, the divine power, Shakti inherent in the very letters, each letter has a divine Shakti inherent in it. So mantras are generated out of these letters. And the entirety of the Sanskrit alphabet, it means that I am that limitless consciousness. How does it do so? It's incredible. We never think about that way. If you know Sanskrit a little bit also, it'll be amazing to you. But even without that, we can grasp. See, here is a secret. In the Sanskrit alphabet, also in many Indian alphabets, it starts with A. The first is not A, it's A. The most primitive sound is A. And the last one is H. If you see the whole alphabet, it starts with A and ends with H. Now, A is the mantra for Shiva, according to the science of mantras in the way of Shakti. A is the mantra for Shiva, is the Bija mantra for Shiva. And Ha is the mantra for Vimarsha Shakti, the Divine Mother. And in between these two letters, A and Ha, the last one, in between are all the other letters. All letters. A and Ha, if you put them together, and the dot is put there, it is called Aham. And those who know Sanskrit or a little bit also, you know what Aham means? I. The word for I, the vertical I, the word for I, the subject, me, I, is Aham. And they show that in Aham is all other letters of the language. And from those letters comes all language, all names. And those names represent the entire universe. So the word Aham, which means you, the you or I, the person, it includes in it the source of the entire universe. That's the way they think about it. So all names corresponding to all entities in the universe are encompassed in that word aham. The word aham, I, the mystical meaning of that is pure consciousness, Shiva, starting with a, coming down to her in the entire process, manifests as everything in the universe, the cause of the universe, the subtle universe, and the physical universe. But the Swami said that the four salutations, so Shiva manifests as the cause, as the subtle universe, as the gross universe, and does so by the power of Shakti, the Divine Mother. So Aham, it sounds complicated, but actually is only one idea going through all of it. That language is mystical. It runs much deeper than what we think. We use it for referring to this world. And they say using language in its ordinary sense traps us in samsara. Using language in this mystical sense will free us from samsara. Now the Guru gives you a mantra, like we have all got, most of us. And that mantra is generated from this matrika, from this set of mystical letters. And this mantra refers to one or the other forms of the Divine Mother. In some form, the Ishta Devata. It could be male, it could be female, it could be beyond gender. And as we repeat that mantra, the mind and the personality becomes divinized. And the divinity inherent in that mantra reveals itself. The repetition of the mantra goes into the second stage, which is called bhavana. Bhavana is a meaning, there's no good English equivalent for it. It means meditation. Abhinavagupta says, what is meditation? He says it's a kind of imagination. The difference is what already exists and yet is not evident to me is made evident by this process. There's a difference between imagination and meditation. Imagination is when I imagine Harry Potter or Superman or Batman. It's a product of the artist's imagination, author's imagination. It's not really out there. But bhavana is something already here. We don't see it. The mystic sees it and gives us a practice so that it can become clear to us. So one translation was creative imagination to grasp an already existing but unseen reality. But the word bhavana. And then it manifests itself as our real nature, as the Ishta Devata. That is called Shuddha Vidya, the third aspect of the practice. And then what happens is the difference between knower, known, and known, and knowledge, knower, known, and knowledge, it disappears into one uniform awareness. That is the realization of I am Shiva, or in Advaita Vedanta, Aham Brahmasmi. I think I've run out of time, so I will conclude here. Shakti, they call it Shakta Upai in Kashmiri Shaivism, a very powerful means to enlightenment, especially relevant for us, because actually many of us, we practice that. We don't often speak about it, but this is in essence the science behind the practice that we all do. I will conclude with the peace chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanam.
And now we will have Rupert Spira. He will talk about liberating our thoughts from the tyranny of the illusory self.
So would you say that thoughts aren't material? Would you say that thoughts are things as bodies and
thoughts are what I call objects.
Objects.
Anything that has an objective quality is what I call an object. So by objects, I don't just mean physical objects. A feeling of loneliness has an objective quality to it. It's not the taste of tea, it's the feeling of loneliness. It has distinguishing features, yes? Those distinguishing features are objective, we know them. I feel lonely. The feeling of loneliness has a particular quality that is observable or feelable or knowable. The taste of tea has other particular qualities that are knowable or perceivable. So yes, thoughts are in that sense are objects.
So my relationship to thought can be much the same to my relationship with the world.
Yes.
Yeah. In that I can't control what happens in the world, and I really can't control what thoughts come in. I think that there's a tendency to kind of, identify my quality of being by the thoughts that arise.
No. Identify the quality of being just by the quality of being. The screen doesn't derive its qualities from the image. Your relationship to thoughts and perceptions is the same as the relationship between a screen and an image. In other words, the screen is intimately one with the image. It's closer than close to the image, but at the same time it is completely independent of it. That is you. You, this experience of being aware, are totally intimate with all your experience. Every experience you have, that is every so-called inside feeling, but also every so-called outside perception, are this close to you. Totally intimate. Not even intimate, because there are not two things there to begin with. There isn't a screen and an image. Yeah, it's just you, just knowing. So in that sense, you are intimate with all experience, equally intimate, not more intimate with this than you are with this, equally intimate with all experience. And at the same time, you, the experience of simply being aware, are absolutely independent of all experience. So it's this mixture of total intimacy and total freedom.
I think I have an easier time with, you made a comment earlier about the world is reflected as we are, as we believe ourselves and life to be, that's what we see. And you didn't exactly say that, but is that right? That's what you...
As we understand ourselves, so we see the world.
And that, so that...
If we think, in other words, I am a temporary finite self that shares the limits of the body, if we think I am a temporary finite object, then our experience will appear in conformity with that belief. In other words, your experience will be a multiplicity and diversity of finite objects. You will feel that you are separate from everyone and everything, related to them through an act of knowing, feeling, or perceiving. I know such and such. I love you. I see the tree. These are the three channels: knowing, feeling, and perceiving, through which the inside self, the subject, the apparent subject, is connected to the outside object, other, or world. But if you believe that you are a temporary, finite subject, made out of mind, living in the body. But if you know that you are simply this unqualified experience of being aware, then you find yourself equally pervading all experience. You cannot say, I am closer to my thoughts than I am to the sound of that car. Thoughts are made out of thinking. The sound of the car is made out of hearing. Both appear equally in me. And when I try to touch the stuff that they are made of, all I find is this empty knowing.
That's true. So,
But
no, really, Rupert, I understand, and I know I have that experience. So, but I have thoughts that are in direct contradiction to that, even
yes,
in the midst of that experience.
so you have to recondition your mind. as well as your body. That is part of what we do here. It's one thing to understand that, and you obviously understand it. But just understanding it is not enough. Because your mind and your body have been laboring for decades under the serving for decades the demands and the fears and the neuroses of an illusory, finite self. So just the recognition of your true nature is not enough to put an end to those habits. They come back with a vengeance, very often stronger than they were before, because the separate self feels, quite rightly, that it is threatened, its existence is threatened by our new understanding. It is threatened. Its days are numbered. And it's going to do everything it can to prevent itself disappearing. So this a tidal wave of thoughts and, more importantly, feelings are going to come back and assail you and try to persuade you of the validity of the separate self. So much of what we do here is not just about the recognition of our true nature. It is about the realignment of our thoughts, feelings, activities, relationships, and perceptions with that understanding. So when these thoughts keep coming back, you have to be firm with them. When a thought appears on behalf of the separate self, before doing what the thought wants you to do, the thought's going to take you off down a journey of activity or relationship or whatever it is. Before doing what the thought tells you to do, question the self on whose behalf that thought is rising. Who are you representing? Ask the thought, on whose behalf do you come to me? And if it is a thought that is based on being a temporary, finite self, then instead of following the thought, question the validity of the self on whose behalf that thought is arising. And be relentless about that. Every thought that rises on behalf of a finite self, question it, rather than doing what the thought wants you to do. And eventually, you will erode this old habit of the mind rising on behalf of an illusory self. And the mind more and more will begin to rise on behalf of the qualities of the true and only self of pure awareness. Your thoughts, you won't stop having thoughts, but your thoughts will be an expression of what you truly are, not what you previously imagined yourself to be. So it is not a getting rid of thoughts, it's a liberation of our thoughts and indeed our feelings and perceptions from the tyranny of a non-existent, finite self.
So do you ever have thoughts that you just have to say no to?
Yes, occasionally an old thought arises in me based on an old habit of believing myself to be a finite self, and I do exactly what I've just suggested to you. What happens after one has, to begin with, when a thought rises on behalf of a finite self, it takes us maybe 20 minutes to walk ourselves, to question the I around whom that thought revolves. And we may have to take some time slowly walking ourselves back to find the true I of simply aware being. And that may take some time. We do it the first time, it may take 20 minutes. And then the second time, 15 minutes. And then the third time, 10 minutes. And as we become more practiced at this, we we find shortcuts. We don't have to go every single step, plod, 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 because we've done it before. We can go quicker. We find shortcuts. And in the end, we find when that thought arises on behalf of the finite self, it doesn't really require time anymore to walk ourselves back. There's just like an instant recognition, and it falls.
Because there's often, a great physical resistance along with the thought, or physical, there's the whole physical thing along with the thought.
Yes, yes. But we'll spend a lot of time this week exploring just that, because the separate self, the apparently temporary, finite consciousness that is the separate self, is not just concealed in our thoughts as beliefs. More importantly, it is concealed in our body as feelings. And that, in fact, is the deeper root of the separate self. And in fact, long after the separate self has been flushed out of our beliefs, it remains present, hiding in our feelings. And in this approach, we spend a lot of time, as you know, exploring this deeper root of the sense of separation. First of all, exposing the sense of me in the body, gradually encouraging it to come up out of its hiding places, and then gradually allowing it to dissolve.
Thank you.
And now we'll listen to Nome, being free from thought.
The self is being, and being is free from thought. Therefore, the instruction from the Maharshi to remain free from thought signifies abidance as unalloyed being. Abidance as being, as the unconceived self, is true knowledge. True knowledge is free from thought. It is that state in which there is no division by thought, in which thought does not exist. It can never be thought of, just as being can never be conceived. In thought, there is a possibility of limitation or bondage. Free from thought, there is no such thing. In thought, there is I and this, the assumption of individuality being the primal thought to which all other thoughts are appended, or for which all other thoughts are. Being has no I and this, no individual, and nothing objective to it. All possible doubts about one's own real nature are merely thoughts of such, not reality. While true knowledge is doubtless. In thought alone is there the conception of being in one state or another. Real being is stateless, having neither a waking, dreaming, deep sleep, living, dead, or any other state. The very idea that thought exists is itself an idea, a thought. In true being, nothing of the kind has ever occurred. No more than divisions can be made in vast open space. To inquire and know yourself is to no longer imagine yourself within the context of thought. It is not to indulge in thought. It is not to suppress thought. It has nothing to do with thought. For true knowledge deals with the reality of being. And thought is something completely illusory. What do you supposedly know about the world? Isn't it just a compilation of thought? What do you know about anything else, anything other? Isn't it just the idea of it? When that idea is not present, you say you don't know it. When you have the idea, you say you know it. But in either case, it is just a state of thought. True knowledge is beyond such so-called knowledge and ignorance. True knowledge is of real being, which is never an I, an individual, and never a this, something objective. Therefore, to remain free from thought signifies remaining in that wisdom which is non-objective, and in which there is no misidentification whatsoever. If you can first perceive that you cannot be thought, that you are the silent witness of thought, of the nature of consciousness, this is very wise. If you further pursue an inquiry into the nature of that self or consciousness, and remove from its definition everything conceived, every kind of thought, including the thought of the wit nest, what remains is pure consciousness, which is identical with being. If you retain the idea, sometimes I'm the witness, sometimes I'm not, that's just thought. Know yourself in a manner beyond thought. If there is the conception, sometimes I'm abiding in the self, and sometimes I am not, that's just thought. The self has no such modification. Know yourself as you are, not with a bunch of thoughts. Already you know yourself as existing without the need to think of it. Relinquish the needless, the attempt to define yourself or reality with an idea. What remains, which is what truly is, of the nature of unlimited being, consciousness, bliss, is yourself, is real existence. This existence can never be conceived, is always self-luminous or self-known, has no state or condition, is endowed with neither a beginning nor an end. And is known by the wise to alone be true. if you remain steadily dwelling in the knowledge of the self, the supposition that there is such a thing as an existent thought will seem laughably absurd. And your freedom from thought will be the self-evident knowledge of yourself.
And we will breathe in and breathe out. Notice the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. Take long, slow breaths. And now investigate within yourself, what is your identity when you're free from thought? Who are you when your mind is quiet? Who are you between two thoughts? Who am I? Am I a body? Am I the senses? Am I the life force pulsing in the body? Am I a thought? And am I the intellect? Who knows this person that I think I am? Who am I? All right, let's close with a short chant. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more: a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on the screen next. These satsangs will continue in the coming weeks with this series based on the Ramana Maharshi book, Who Am I? Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you.